Okay, welcome back to the channel. And this is going to be the Big 12. We're going to go B through O, starting with Baylor going to Oklahoma. This will be split into two videos. And before I start, please hit the like button. Please subscribe down below if you want more content. And you can hit the like button at any point. Right now, in the middle, at the end. Up to you, but please hit that like button. Okay, starting out with the Big 12, we're going to go Baylor, who went 7-6 last year, 4-5 in the Big 12 Conference. Their offense was average, 29.5 points per game, which is 63rd in the country. Their defense, 31.7 points per game, which was 91st in the country. And they're 20th in returning production, so they return a lot, and they return, in my view, the biggest piece of their team, which is Matt Rule and Charlie Brewer. 5-year recruiting average is 36. They were 35th last year, so about the same. Key losses: H-back Jalen Hurd played wide receiver, played running back, played whatever you needed him to do after transferring from Tennessee. He had 1,155 total yards and 7 touchdowns. He's a do-it-all type of player, good player. Didn't really like him at Texas. He talked a lot of smack, but he was a good player. Key returning, like I said before, Charlie Brewer, quarterback, 3,019 yards passing, 19 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Beast at wide receiver in Denzel Mims. This guy made a sick one-handed catch for my Texas Longhorns last year on a slant route and took it all the way to the house. He also had 794 yards with his 55 receptions and 8 touchdowns. All 3 running backs returned. John Lovett, Jermichael Hasty, and Tristan Ebner. They combined for 1,420 yards and 13 touchdowns. 5 of the 7 top tacklers also returned, including leader and Captain Clay Johnston, who had 99 total tackles last year. I expect this team to improve. I actually have them going 9-3, and I'm going to have to look at the Big 12's wins and losses. But right now, I believe that will be 3rd, if not their 4th. You can probably predict the 2 teams in front of them. But here's their schedule. Stephen F. Austin, win. University of Texas San Antonio, win. They get a bye week. Then they play Rice, who used to be good. They're not good anymore. They'll win that game at Rice. Then I have a loss versus Iowa State. I have a win at Kansas State, a win versus Texas Tech, a loss at Oklahoma State, a bye week, then a win versus West Virginia, a win at TCU, a loss versus Oklahoma. Sadly, this hurts, but a win versus Texas, and then a win at Kansas. What sticks out to me is both Iowa State and Baylor in the Big 12 both have to play Oklahoma and Texas. Everyone plays everyone, so that's obvious. But they both played Oklahoma and Texas on back-to-back weeks. And Texas plays, obviously, Baylor and Iowa State on back-to-back weeks. And I think Baylor gets Texas there. Also, what sticks out is they lose to Iowa State. They could win that game. They could go 10-2, but then again, they could also lose to Texas, which would make them 9-3. I just think 9-3 is a good record for this team. I could see 8-4. 10-2 is a bit of a stretch. I could see it, but I'm confident 9-3. But 8-4 wouldn't surprise me. 10-2 would surprise me. I think it could happen, but that's a little bit out of reach this year for this team. Next up, we have the Iowa State Cyclones, who went 8-5 last year, 6-3 in the Big 12. Their offense was 83rd in the country with 26.8 points per game. Their defense was 37th in the country with 22.9 points per game. And going against Big 12 offenses, that's very impressive to me. Returning production, 80th out of 130 in the country. 5-year recruiting, 54th, but they've gotten a little bit better than their average last year at 46th in the country. And Matt Campbell, I think if he stays there, which is going to be hard to keep him there because he will get big job offers the rest of his time there, is as long as he chooses to stay there, however long that is, he's going to get an offer every year from a big school. I'm surprised Ohio State didn't try to get him over Ryan Day, to be honest with you. Key losses: David Montgomery, do-it-all running back. They struggled without him when they played my Texas Longhorns in the first half of that game last year when he was suspended. They didn't move the ball very well. They moved the ball much better with him, and still not great, but moved it better. He had 1,216 yards on 4.7 yards per carry and 13 touchdowns. And then an absolute freak athlete at wide receiver in Akeem Butler. It's sad that he's hurt this year for the Arizona Cardinals. I really wanted to watch him play. I think he's an absolute stud at wide receiver. I don't know how they got him when they did. I believe they got him at the end of the 4th, early 5th round, which is a steal, in my opinion. He had 60 receptions, 1,318 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 22 yards per catch. Big play, Big guy, a lot of speed. He's a fantastic player. Key returning, though, Brock Purdy, who was a true freshman last year. He only played in 10 games, and he threw for 2,250 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. He also threw, I believe, around 67% completion percentage, which is absolutely amazing for a true freshman to have that type of completion percentage. Defensive lineman Jaquan Bailey led the team in sacks and tackles for loss. He is back. Standout safety Greg Eisworth is back. This guy was a JUCO player. He came in, I believe he was a 2 or 3 star recruit. Matt Campbell knows how to coach. He will get you to play your best football if you go there. If you're a 2-star guy, he'll milk what talent you have. He'll get it out of you. He's a great coach. He led the team with 87 tackles. Mike Rose, linebacker, who is also a true freshman, 75 tackles. All these players, Jaquan Bailey, Greg Eisworth, and Mike Rose, all have at least one more year of eligibility after this if they decide to come back. Mike Rose has to, but Greg Eisworth, I could see going, leaving and going pro. He could probably be a 3rd or 4th round pick. This year, I have Iowa State going 9-3 also, same as Baylor. I would have them, if David Montgomery decided to come back, Hakeem Butler decided to come back, I'd actually have them in the Big 12 championship game. I think that's how good this team could have been if those two guys came back. But I have them going 9-3. Maybe they do make the Big 12 championship game. You'll have to wait and see. But wins versus Northern Iowa, a bye week, then they play the rivalry game versus Iowa. They'll win that game at home. Win versus Louisiana Monroe at home. Win at Baylor. Win versus TCU at home. Win at West Virginia. Win at Texas Tech. Win at Oklahoma. Win versus Oklahoma State. Bye week. Loss at Oklahoma. Loss at Texas. Win versus Kansas. So that's 9-3. In a loss at Oklahoma and loss at Oklahoma and a loss to Texas is nothing to sneeze at. And actually, I was wrong. I have them going 10-2, so better than I thought. And their only losses are to the 2 teams that are probably going to be ahead of them in the conference. Maybe we'll have to see. Kansas, next team up, 3-9 last year, 1-8 in the Big 12. They added the Matt Hatter. We'll see how he does there. Les Miles. Offensive rank 106 in the country with 23.8 points per game. Defensive rank 82nd in the country with 30 points per game. Returning production is 112th of 130. 5-year recruiting is 69th and 70th in 2019. I think that will get much better if Les Miles stays there for multiple years. I think they can probably get in the 40 to 50 range. I don't think you get much more than that. If you've ever been to Kansas, I don't see why you want to go there to play football. There's much better places to live. But that's a personal choice. That's just an opinion of mine. Key losses. Wide receiver Steven Sims Jr. led the team in receptions with 53 and yards with 535. They also lose linebacker Joe Dinian, who's on my Denver Broncos. I don't know if he made the team. We'll have to wait and see. First in tackles with 144. And they also lose defensive tackle Daniel Weiss. First in tackles for loss with 12 and sacks with 5. So they lose their best 2 defensive players. And not just stats-wise. If you watch, they were definitely their best 2 defensive players. Key returning, though, running back Puka Williams, probably one of the top 10 running backs in the country. The guy's amazing. I mean, especially running behind the type of offensive linemen they have and around the skill position players they have. They don't have much, so people go into games game planning for this guy, and he still gets his yards. He averages 7 yards per carry. He also had 9 total touchdowns last year. Safeties Bryce Tornin and Mike Lee have to become the leaders on defense. They're their 2 probably best players after Joe Dinian and Daniel Weiss left, and they're both safeties. So the back end, I think, will be pretty good, but the front 7's not very good. Also, they have new quarterback Thomas McVitie. I'm not really sure how to say that. He's a JUCO transfer, and he came from Moeller High School, which is pretty close to where I live. It's in the Cincinnati area, and it's a absolute dominant high school with any sport. He actually went to Pitt, then went to a junior college, and now he's back in Division I with Kansas. So I think this may be a solution at quarterback, not a long-term, probably obviously the next 2 years, but I think he's better than anyone they've had the past couple of years. Connor Stanley did not get the job done last year. He wasn't very good. I have this team going 3-9. I just don't think they have enough talent yet. I think Les Miles will get this turnaround. I think you can start to see 5 to 7 win seasons coming in the future, those type of seasons. I don't think you'll ever be great, but I think 5 to 7 wins is possible in the next 2 to 3 years. I have a win versus Indiana State, a win versus Coastal Carolina, a loss at Boston College, loss versus West Virginia, loss at TCU, loss at Oklahoma, then you finally get a bye after 4 losses in a row. Then guess what? You play Texas on the road. You're going to lose that game. Sorry. Loss versus Texas Tech, win versus Kansas State, another bye week. You're going to lose. Or actually, sorry, I have you beating K-State. I was getting so caught up with all the losses in a row there. I have you beating Kansas State. I actually think Kansas State might be the worst team in this conference, talent-wise. But I don't think they will be record-wise. Loss versus Oklahoma State, loss at Iowa State, loss versus Baylor. That makes you 3-9. Next, we have the Kansas State Wildcats, who went 5-7 last year and 3-6 in the Big 12. Their offensive rank was 111th with 22.5 points per game. Their defensive rank was 49th with 25.4 points per game. Returning production, 31st of 130 teams. 5-year recruiting is the worst, even worse than Kansas. I was surprised by this with a legendary coach like Bill Snyder there. And if you would have told me last year they recruited back, because I think everyone saw the writing on the wall that he wasn't going to be back, that would have made sense. But they were 63rd of the last 5 years and 62nd last year. New coach Chris Klieman comes from North Dakota State, where I believe they've won 4 FCS championships out of the last 5 years. May be wrong on that. I know he's won a lot of championships there. And he's also produced quarterback like Carson Wentz. And he actually recruited the quarterback that's returning this year, Skylar Thompson. So I think they'll gel pretty well, and the offense will probably be a little bit better than last year, at least throwing the ball wise. They do lose running back Alex Barnes, who accounted for 1,355 yards last year rushing and 5.3 yards per carry. They also lose wide receiver Isaiah Zuber, who led the team in reception yards. They lose him to transfer. Mississippi State gains him in the transfer portal, or actually not even transfer portal. I believe, no, it was the transfer portal. He didn't graduate, so it was the transfer portal. I could be wrong, though. It could have been graduation, but I'm pretty sure it's the transfer portal. He transferred to, like I said, Mississippi State. They also lose offensive lineman Dalton Risner. He was a second-round pick, and he's versatile. He can play tackle, center, and guard. Plays for my Denver Broncos as well, just like Joe Dinian of Kansas did, or does. That's a big loss when you have a guy that can play that many positions and shift, and he was good at all of them. Pro Football Focus had him rated high in all of those positions. They also lose cornerback Duke Shelley, who's the best cornerback on the team, and had 3 interceptions. He's also in the NFL. Key returning, like I said, Skylar Thompson, who Chris Klieman recruited at North Dakota State, couldn't get him because Bill Snyder offered him late and decided, you know what, I'd rather play in Division I, and I don't blame him for that. He had 1,391 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. There was a quarterback battle, though, and this is part of the reason Bill Snyder's no longer there. He wanted Alex Delton to play, and the coaching staff said, no, Skylar Thompson, no, Skylar Thompson, no, Skylar Thompson. And he just flat out ignored him. And I know the games that I watch, especially the Texas game, Alex Delton could not throw the ball more than 5 to 7 yards accurately downfield. He could only run. They were so easy to game plan for. And when they put Skylar Thompson, they started moving the ball, and they worried me, especially because Texas also got very conservative on the defensive end, which angered me. But anyways, I digress. They also return wide receiver Dalton Schoen, who's the second best wide receiver last year. He's a lot like Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, Hunter Renfro. He's in the slot, little shifty white guy wide receiver. He's a good wide receiver. I think he has a chance to go to the NFL. I could see him having probably a 700 to 800 yard receiving year, which would probably get him drafted in probably the 6th or 7th round, especially since I don't expect Kansas State to be airing it out like Oklahoma, but I expect him to throw it a little bit more, open up the offense a little bit more under Chris Klieman. They return leading tackler, linebacker DeQuan Patton, who had 70 tackles, and defensive end Reggie Walker, who led the team in tackles for loss with 12.5 and sacks with 7.5. I have Kansas State going 4-8 this year. I actually think this is going to be a very good hire. I think they can start competing for Big 12 championships every so often, kind of like Michigan State does in the Big 10. When you have a really good class come in and they stay till their senior year, you can compete those years, and I think they can do that under Chris Klieman. Like I said, though, have them going 4-8 this year with wins versus Nicholas and Bowling Green to start out, but then a loss at Mississippi State. You have a bye week, then you have a loss at Oklahoma State, a loss versus Baylor, bye week, a win versus TCU, which may be unexpected to most people, but TCU doesn't have a quarterback, and we'll talk about them later. Loss versus Oklahoma, loss versus Kansas, loss versus Texas at Texas, then a win versus West Virginia. That puts you at 4-8. You could be I think 4-8 is pretty generous. I think you could be 3-9, 2-10, but 4-8, I see you as 4-8. I think Chris Kleinman's a good coach, as he's proved at the FCS level. Now he needs to prove it here, but just like they say, FCS players can't become good players at the next level in the NFL or even in college when they decide to transfer to a bigger program. I don't believe that. We've seen proof of that. I think a coach can do the same thing. I think a really good FCS coach can come in and produce very well at a Division I college football program. Next and last for this section of the video, we're going to go to, sadly, the defending champion Oklahoma Sooners, who went 12-2 last year, 9-1 in the Big 12. They ranked first in offense with 48.4 points per game and 101st in defense. Obviously, the big problem, we all know that. They always that always shows up in the college football playoff, where they get exposed by better teams than most of the Big 12 has to offer, sadly. The Big 12's kind of gone downhill the last couple years. I think it's going to start coming back up with the resurgence of the program I am wearing on my sweatshirt, hopefully. I don't want to jinx it, knock on wood. Returning production, they were 57th in the country. 5-year recruiting, they were 11th, and they 6th last year. Lincoln Riley's been recruiting at a very high level. Bob Stoops had him recruiting at a 10 to 20 range, and then Lincoln Riley came in. I think he's younger. I think he knows how to relate better to kids. So they've gotten way better in that regard. Key losses. You'd be insane not to mention Kyler Murray when talking about key losses. 4,361 passing yards, 41 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He also had over 1,000 yards rushing and 12 touchdowns on 7.2 yards per carry. I don't like Oklahoma. I liked watching him play. He's a fun player to watch. I really hate Oklahoma. Let me just mention that again. But he is a fun player to watch. And I agree with Arizona drafting him first. He's a special talent. He's accurate. He's got a quick release. He's one of the fastest human beings I've ever seen on the football field as well. And not far behind him, I'm going to mention wide receiver Marquise Hollywood Brown. Led team in reception was 75 and had 1,318 yards. And that's missing. He missed the college football playoff game and most of the Big 12 championship game with an ankle injury. Hopefully that gets better. He's fun to watch as well. Again, I like some of the players on Oklahoma. Just hate that uniform, that ugly crimson uniform. They lose 4 out of their 5 offensive linemen to the NFL, though. They do return, which was said to be the best player on their team last year. That's a little bit of hyperbole in my opinion. But center Creed Humphrey, this guy was born to be a center. He was trained to be a center from a young age. He is going to be a first-round NFL talent when he comes out. I don't care if he's center. He's an amazing player. But they do return him. But again, they lose 4 out of the 5 other offensive linemen to the NFL. They also lose linebacker Curtis Bolton, who was second in tackles with 142. They also lose, sadly, Trey Norwood to a knee injury, their best cornerback from 2018-19. That's not a position you want to lose because they were already thin there. There are guys that aren't very good, and he was the one guy that kind of stood out for them, and he's gone for all of 2019. I'm never going to root for injuries, no matter who I root for, but that does help out Texas, which is good for us, but obviously bad for them and bad for the kid. I'm never going to wish for harm on anyone. Key returning, running backs Kennedy Brooks and Trey Sermon, who had both over 900 yards and 10 touchdowns each rushing. Kennedy Brooks averaged 8.9 yards per carry, 1.1. That means if you handed the ball off all game, let's just say, on average, he would get you 8.9 yards. That means in 10 runs, you'd be on the end zone. 9 to 10 runs, you'd be in the end zone. I mean, that's insane. They also bring back CeeDee Lamb, who will probably challenge Jerry Jeudy along with our wide receiver at Texas, Colin Johnson, for the best wide receiver in the country this year for the Biletnikoff Award. He had 65 receptions with 1,158 yards and 11 touchdowns. They also bring back NFL tight end Brent Calcaterra, who could possibly be a first-round draft pick. He had 396 yards and 6 touchdowns. They also bring back their second leading tackler, first leading tackler, Curtis Bolton II. Led team with 155 tackles and second in sacks with 4.5. They bring back cornerback Parnell Motley, who led the team with 3 interceptions. He got beat a lot, though, and he's going to have to step up with Trey Norwood out. They also added Jalen Hurts. Obviously, that's the talk of the offseason. Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. He's not Baker Mayfield. He's not Kyler Murray. He will not win the Heisman this year. He will not be the number 1 pick in the draft. It's sad that you have to say that because it should take common sense. Those are 2 of the probably 12 most talented human beings to ever play college football at Oklahoma. That's just my opinion. I think they're that good. You could probably even argue top 10. They're that good. Even though Kyler Murray was only there for 1 year, he's that special of a player. They also add, which was probably the most important, he's not returning, but they add him, Alex Grinch, defense. Now, the thing is that I'm confused about, he's supposed to be a really good defensive coordinator, but Ohio State, I think they kind of let him go. I think if they wanted to, they could have kept him, but they let him go, along with Greg Schiano. And their defense, actually, Ohio State's defense was very iffy last year, especially compared to years past. Their linebacking core was atrocious. But anyways, I digress. I think he will fix their defense because it's 101st out of 130 in points per game allowed. If they can get up to around the 70 mark, I think they have a chance of winning the Big 12 again. And I think they have a chance of winning college football playoff game again. Hopefully not. Hopefully that's someone else. I have them going 11-1 this year in the regular season, though, and they play Houston. The spread on that game is way too much, though. 24.5. Houston will cover that spread. I would bet on that. I have bet on that. There's a tip for you guys if you want to bet on that. They also will beat San Diego or South Dakota, sorry. And then they play at UCLA. Before I watched UCLA play on Thursday, I thought maybe UCLA has a chance. UCLA has no chance. Their recruiting is just not good enough. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is just not good enough. Chip Kelly, you could tell at the beginning of that game, he was moving people around, different types of shift, and it worked for the first drive. And then he kind of let that go because I think he realized, these gimmicks aren't going to work the whole game, and he tried to bring it back, and it didn't work again. It's kind of sad watching where he was at Oregon when he was the innovator, when he was bringing the 7-second snap, run up to the line, snap it in 7 seconds, call plays at the line. He had GPS trackers on his players to see how fast they were running, and now that's just kind of a common theme in the Big 12 especially, but in college football. So he's kind of actually been passed up by the stuff he invented, which is very weird. Anyways, Oklahoma then has a bye week. They play Texas Tech. That's a win. At Kansas, that's a win. Their loss at the Cotton Bowl versus Texas. I think they lose that game. I don't think we beat them last year with Kyler Murray. We lost again, but it was a close game in the Big 12 championship game with Kyler Murray. Jalen Hurts is not Kyler Murray. I don't expect him to be. I don't know why people expect him to be that. He's never been that dynamic of a thrower. He's not even as fast. I think the offense will have to be different if they want to be what I have them being in 11-1. If they just come out and decide on the same offense, they will not go 11-1. Jalen Hurts should not be throwing the ball more than 30 times a game. That should be the max, and that's even, I think, a little bit too much. I think 22-25 would be very good for him. But I have a loss at the Cotton Bowl, and then a win versus West Virginia, a win at Kansas State, a win versus Iowa State, a win at Baylor, a win versus TCU, a win at Oklahoma State, and that gets them to 11-1. We'll have to see who I have in the Big 12 championship game, but that will wrap it up for Baylor through Oklahoma. Stay tuned for Oklahoma State through West Virginia next. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Please hit the notification button so you get these videos and you can like even more of them. Thanks for watching. Have a